Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Rumberg. I'm a managing partner with MetricNet, and I will be your presenter for today's webcast on cost metrics. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for participating in our webcast today. And I want to thank BrightTalk for inviting MetricNet to speak on this topic. This is our first webcast of 2020, first webcast of a new decade. And you may have noticed that we've adopted a new format for our webcast this year. We're going to be delivering more webcasts, but they're going to be shorter in length. So instead of 60 minutes, we're going to be doing 30-minute webcasts this year in deference to those who cannot spend a full hour on a webcast. Now, before we get started, I just have a few administrative announcements to make. During today's presentation, all of you will be in listen-only mode. But if you have any questions during the webcast, you'll notice a questions button just above the image of my slides. And during the webcast, you can click that button at any time and type your questions in as the webcast progresses. I'll be wrapping up my presentation at about 25 minutes after the hour and answer any questions that you've typed in during the webcast. Now, just by way of quick introduction, MetricNet's core business is benchmarking. We perform benchmarks for a variety of different industries and functional areas. My role specifically in the company is to manage the contact center, service desk, and desktop support benchmarks for MetricNet. Now, if you're interested, you can download today's slides by clicking the attachments button. You'll also see some other collateral that we have uploaded there in case you're interested in downloading that. Now, you can also request a free consultation with MetricNet. This button doesn't make much sense. It says vote, but that was the only button available to us. So if you click that, you can schedule some time on the phone with MetricNet to get your questions answered or to just get a free consultation. Now, at the conclusion of our webcast, we would ask you to rate our webcast and leave any feedback that you would like to before you exit. Now, for those who are planning to be at Support World Live in April, I'd invite you to attend one or both of my sessions. I will be delivering a 2-day workshop on metrics at the beginning of the conference and then presenting a session on employee engagement towards the end of the conference. Likewise, if you're planning to be at the SDI Service Desk Institute Annual Conference in March, I would invite you to attend any or all of the sessions I'll be presenting there, including one on enterprise services and an ROI workshop for IT service and support. And finally, if you're going to be at SITS, the premier IT Service and Support Conference in London, I'll be doing a presentation on managing service and support as a business. Think internal profit center for service and support. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, we've got 6 items on our agenda today. We're going to start by talking about the importance of metrics and the fact that it is the linchpin of success in IT service and support. We're very quickly going to move on to something called the metrics hierarchy, and there we're going to be talking about the 9 success factors of a successful metrics program for IT service and support, as well as contact centers and desktop support organizations. We're going to define how you determine costs, specifically unitized cost, meaning cost per ticket, cost per contact, cost per incident, and cost per service request. Then we'll be talking about why it's such a critically important metric. The short story there is that cost is your primary measure of efficiency, and specifically unitized cost, cost per contact, cost per ticket, cost per service request, cost per incident. These are critically important to look at because that is your primary measure of efficiency. We're going to talk about the key drivers of cost. It's important to understand that this is a labor-intensive function, so your labor costs and specifically your labor efficiency is going to be your biggest driver, but there are other drivers as well, and we're going to talk about all of them. And then we're going to share some benchmarking data with you, and finally we'll get to some Q&A. So let's get right into it, starting with a paradigm that you've probably all seen and heard before. This idea of people, process, and technology has been around for a long, long time. And essentially what it says is that if you manage your personnel well, that is, have good human resource activities, and you have definable and repetitive or repeatable processes, and then you enable that with technology, you're going to have a successful service and support organization or a successful contact center. But that's not really true. What we found is that there are many organizations out there that do very well with people, process, and technology, but they still don't have world-class service desks or contact centers or desktop support organizations. So in our research, what we found is that the missing component here, the missing ingredient, is metrics. Now, we're not suggesting here that metrics supersedes people, process, and technology, but we're saying that it is a foundational discipline. Many organizations don't have strong metrics. They don't define their metrics well. They don't know how to use them beyond observational purposes, meaning that they don't know how to use them prescriptively and diagnostically. And that's a key thing that we're going to be talking about today, is leveraging metrics beyond mere observation, beyond mere reporting, leveraging them for diagnosis, prescription, continuous improvement, and ultimately achieving world-class performance. Now, in case you're assuming that we're pitching metrics because the name of the company is MetricNet, well, that's partly true, but there's empirical evidence to back this up as well. When we look at data from some recent benchmarks, 143 data points shown on this particular chart, and regress that against something we call the balance score, we'll be doing a webcast on that a couple months into the future, but look at it this way. The balance score is an overall measure of your success for your contact center or your service desk or your desktop support organization. On the x-axis, what we're showing here is the maturity of the metrics function. We call it the performance measurement and management discipline. 1 is least mature, 5 is most mature. We've got 143 data points shown here by the blue diamonds. The regression line clearly shows correlation. Moreover, we know that this is cause and effect. There are a number of tests, including the Granger test, that will allow us to statistically determine whether or not this is mere correlation or truly causation. And we do know that this is cause and effect. I mentioned earlier that maturing metrics is one of the linchpins of success for a contact center, for a service desk, or for desktop support. And you can clearly see that here. Moreover, it's not just a correlation, it is cause and effect. As the metrics mature, move to the right on the x-axis, we get better outcomes, we get better overall performance on the balanced scorecard. Now, the metrics hierarchy really encompasses the 9 success factors in performance measurement and management, starting with merely having KPIs. Now, 100% of the organizations we work with claim to have KPIs, and I would say that's an accurate claim. But when we ask them, do you use your metrics for reporting, only about 90% use those metrics for reporting. When we ask, can you define all of your metrics, about 80% can accurately define all of their metrics. Then when we move up to the next success factor in our hierarchy, do you set performance targets with your metrics? Only 60% do that. I find that surprising. If you're going to track a metric, you should have a target for the metric. The one exception would be handle time. We don't believe in targets for handle time because oftentimes your handle time might go up when you see a higher first contact resolution rate. Conversely, if there's a target for handle time, that might create an incentive to reduce handle time, which may not be necessarily the right thing to do. So for any given metric, we believe you should have a target for it, the one exception being handle time metrics. Then we move up the hierarchy. Do you understand KPI cause and effect? Do you understand what drives cost? Do you understand what drives quality? Do you understand what drives your service levels? Do you understand what drives your agent metrics? Do you understand what drives your efficiency or your productivity metrics? Most organizations don't. Only 30% really understand that cause and effect relationship. But this is crucial to using metrics diagnostically and prescriptively. So the next question is, are you using your metrics diagnostically? The single most effective tool for that is benchmarking. Are you using your metrics prescriptively? Only about 10% actually take actions based upon their metrics. That's what prescription is all about. Are you making informed management decisions based upon your metrics discipline? And finally, are you continuously improving? Can you measure month over month improvements in your overall performance as measured by a balance score? And ultimately, have you achieved world-class performance? Only about 5% of the organizations, whether they're contact centers, service desks, or desktop support organizations, can truly say that they've achieved world-class performance. But the arrow on the far right side tells the whole story here. As you move up the hierarchy, the value increases dramatically. You don't get much value out of just having metrics and just doing reporting and defining your metrics and setting performance targets. You have to do those things. But the real value comes near the top of the hierarchy, using metrics diagnostically, prescriptively, for continuous improvement, and ultimately to achieve world-class performance. The series that we're beginning today on metrics, we're not just covering cost metrics, although that's our focus today. In the future, we're going to be looking at quality metrics, service level metrics, agent metrics, contact handling metrics, and a variety of other metrics in an effort to ensure that those who are attending this webcast series have the tools they need, the insight they need to mature their metrics discipline get the full value out of their metrics, and ultimately get to continuous improvement and world-class performance. Now, some of the more common metrics that you will find in both a contact center and a service desk, we're not showing desktop support metrics here, but they don't differ a whole lot from this. We organized them into the 6 categories shown. There's cost metrics and quality metrics, productivity, agent, service level, and contact handling or call handling metrics. There are literally hundreds of metrics out there. It doesn't matter if you're a contact center, a service desk, or a desktop support organization. There are hundreds and hundreds of metrics out there, but the ones we see most commonly in the contact center environment and for service desks are summarized on this page. Now, the good news is you don't have to create a great big metrics bureaucracy in order to leverage your metrics for success. There is an 80-20 rule, and we've summarized that here on page 14. The metrics highlighted represent those that matter the most: cost per contact, customer satisfaction, first contact resolution rate, agent utilization, productivity metric that drives cost, agent job satisfaction. We found that's a bellwether metric. We find that if job satisfaction is good within a contact center, a service desk, or desktop support, almost everything else takes care of itself. So it is a harbinger of how the overall performance in a support organization is going to be. And then the service level metric, you can look at ASA, you can look at percent of calls answered within 30 or 60 or 50 seconds, for example. You can look at abandonment rate. Technically, they're not all service levels. Really, it's percent of calls answered within X number of seconds. That's a true service level. Not every organization tracks that, so we tend to look at ASA as a proxy for that. They're not the same metrics, but ASA will tell you a lot of the same things that percent of calls answered in 30 or 60 seconds will tell you. So the 80-20 rule says less is more, meaning that you don't need a great big metrics bureaucracy. You don't need all the metrics shown on this page. You need the ones that are highlighted, and you need to aggregate them into a balanced scorecard. As I mentioned earlier, one of the subsequent webcasts we're going to be doing in this series is on the balanced scorecard. So I would encourage you to sign up for the future webcast, to stay tuned, because we're going to be covering the balanced scorecard in a subsequent webcast. Key takeaway here: less is more. You can manage a service desk and a desktop support or a contact center organization very effectively with just 6 metrics plus a balanced scorecard. So one thing we want to make a point about is unitized cost. You know, if somebody tells me they're spending $5 million a year on their contact center, or $2.5 million a year for desktop support, or $6 million a year on their service desk, that means absolutely nothing to me. I want to know how many contacts or tickets or incidents and service requests you're handling. In other words, we need unitized cost. It's not enough to say we're spending $5 million a year on our service desk. We need to know how many contacts you're handling, or how many tickets you're handling, or how many incidents and service requests you're handling. In other words, we want to divide that cost, whether it's a monthly cost or an annual cost, by your workload, whether that's contacts per month or year, tickets per month or year, incidents and service requests per month or year. So unitized cost is what we're after here. Total cost doesn't mean much to us. We can't really compare that. We can't really benchmark that. But once we unitize it, we can look at cost per contact, or cost per ticket, or cost per incident, and cost per service request, and we can tell you some things about that. Are you efficient, inefficient? Are you in the range that we would expect to see you? Are you so low cost that you're sacrificing quality? Are you so high cost or are you so high quality that you're driving your costs through the roof? We can learn a lot of things from unitized cost, which is why we're going to be talking about, going forward in the next several slides, cost per contact, cost per ticket, cost per incident, and cost per service request. Now, one thing you should know, and this is based on benchmarking data, is that if we take a typical service desk, contact center, or desktop support organization, they all have this same rough breakdown. About half your costs would be agent salaries and benefits. Agent in a contact center, analyst in a service desk, technician in desktop support, about half your costs are tied up in those agents. Now, you've got another roughly 17% for your indirect personnel. What are those? Those are your supervisors, your team leads, your workforce schedulers, your QA, QC people, your trainers, and the like. You always have indirect personnel typically working in one of these support activities. In technology and telecom is a little less than 10% of the total. We've got office space and facilities expense representing about 15%. And then we have a catch-all category, travel, training, and office supplies, roughly 7%. Now, most of our clients can tell us what their agent salaries and benefits are. They might even be able to look at total headcount cost. But here's a real quick rule of thumb. If you're trying to get to a fully loaded cost for your contact center, your service desk, or your desktop support, just take your agent salaries and benefits in a contact center, take your analyst salaries and benefits in a service desk, take your technician salaries and benefits in desktop support, and double it. And that gets you to roughly a fully loaded cost, because many of our clients have great difficulty determining what their indirect costs are, whether it be for office space and facilities, travel, training, and office supplies, technology, and telecommunications. And so the easy way to get to an estimated fully loaded cost is to look at your agent salaries and benefits and double that number. That's going to get you pretty close to what your fully loaded cost is, just something to keep in mind. Now, it's critically important to recognize that cost is never looked at in a vacuum. Cost and quality, think of those as the yin and yang of service and support. Cost per ticket or cost per contact, cost per service request, cost per incident. That is your primary measure of efficiency. Customer satisfaction is your primary measure of effectiveness. Those two metrics are in tension. And I'm showing this particular chart because those two metrics, we call them the foundation metrics, and it's just those two. Cost per unit, and that might be cost per ticket, it might be cost per contact, it might be cost per incident or cost per service request, is your primary measure of efficiency. Customer satisfaction, y-axis shown here, is your primary measure of effectiveness. Now, the white diamonds on this chart represent about 100 data points. The green line in the upper right-hand corner represents an optimized service desk, but the same chart would hold for a contact center or for desktop support. You might be optimized at a relatively high cost, but a very high quality. That would be the upper leftmost green diamond. And then the green diamond in the lower right is still below average on, or still above average, I should say, on customer satisfaction, but it has extremely low cost. We make no judgment about whether or not you're high cost, high quality, or high quality, lower cost, the far right-hand diamond. That's a strategic decision your organization has to make. Can you afford to be a $50 a ticket service desk with 99% customer satisfaction, or are you going to be better off as a $20 a ticket service desk with 95% customer satisfaction? Those are the strategic choices you have to make. But if you're on that outer perimeter in the upper right-hand quadrant, that is where you are truly optimized. Optimization is an overrated word. It simply means that you're getting the best bang for your buck. You're getting the best result out of the limited resources you've had. You've wrung all of the inefficiency out of your processes, and you're achieving the best result given the limited resources you have. You'll notice on this chart that we have 4 quadrants. There are 2 bisectors on the chart. The horizontal bisector represents the average customer satisfaction for this group of data points. Vertical bisector represents the average cost per ticket or cost per contact for the set of data points. You clearly want to be in the upper right-hand quadrant. That is where you are both efficient, meaning low cost, and effective, meaning high quality. And if you are optimized, you're going to be on that outer line. You might be optimized, as I mentioned earlier, at a relatively high cost, very high quality, or you might be optimized at a relatively high quality and a very low cost, which would be that upper or that lower right-hand green diamond. So keep in mind the tension that exists between cost and quality. It never goes away. It's actually a good thing because it forces you to make intelligent choices about how you're going to use your resources. Let's talk about the drivers of cost. Remember, this was one of the elements of the hierarchy in our 9 success factors. Most organizations don't understand the cause and effect relationship. So let's start at cost per unit of work. Big driver here is utilization because these are labor-intensive functions. You saw the pie chart a couple slides back. Half your costs are tied up in your agents or your analysts or your technicians. Little over or pretty close to 2/3 of your cost is tied up in all personnel if you include your indirect personnel along with that. So utilization, which is a measure of efficiency, is your biggest driver of your cost. But there are other drivers. For example, your ratio of agents to total headcount. If you've got a service desk with 50 people in it and 40 of those are agents, your ratio of agents to total headcount is 40 over 50, which is 80%. So that would be your ratio there. The higher the ratio is, the broader the span of control. The lower the ratio is, the more top-heavy the organization is. So you want that ratio to be somewhere in the range of 80%, meaning agents divided by total headcount within your support organization. Absenteeism and turnover, believe it or not, is a significant driver of cost. Imagine having an absenteeism of 10, 12, 14%, which some of our clients do. What that means is that you have to be overstaffed or offer overtime hours equivalent to 10, 12, 14% if you want to be able to manage the workload. First level resolution we consider a cost metric because it is a proxy for total cost of ownership in level 1 service and support, meaning service desk. And then your handle time, of course, is going to have a big impact on your cost. A short handle time, low cost per unit of work. Long handle time, high cost per unit of work. And that has implications for what metric we want to look at. We can also unitize this by cost per minute of handle time, and we're going to talk about that a couple slides from now. But let's build the rest of this out. Here's our cause and effect diagram, showing the metrics that really matter and showing what drives what drives cost, what drives utilization. Your service levels are a big driver of utilization, but this is an important diagram to understand because if you understand what drives your cost, what drives your customer satisfaction, it puts a great deal of power in your hands to achieve desired outcomes. So the way to manage your cost is to manage utilization, manage the ratio of agents to total headcount, maintain a reasonable level of absenteeism and turnover. Turnover drives cost because every time you lose a level 1 agent or analyst in a service desk, it costs about $12,000 to replace them. In a contact center, it costs about $10,000 to replace them, so it is costly. Manage first level resolution, and then of course handle time. So by managing those drivers of cost, you can maintain a relatively efficient cost structure in your organization. Now on the next couple of charts, I'm going to show you some correlation data. On this, we're looking at handle time, x-axis, versus cost per ticket. No surprise, as the handle time gets longer, your ticket cost goes up. That shouldn't be a surprise at all. Now, there is dispersion around the mean. You pick any given handle time, and you see a range of costs associated with that. But your handle time is going to be a significant driver of cost. And for that reason, we're going to talk about not only a unitized cost like cost per ticket, cost per contact, but we're going to look at cost per minute of handle time because that allows us to normalize a little bit more effectively and compare, for example, a service desk that's doing Microsoft Office and Windows support, which might have a handle time of 4 or 5 minutes, versus a service desk that's supporting complex business applications in Oracle and SAP and might have a handle time of 30 minutes, for example. So this does have implications for how we might unitize this on a per minute of handle time basis. There's a correlation between utilization, x-axis, and cost per ticket. No surprise here. As the utilization increases, the cost tends to go down. These lines, lines that go through here represent regression lines. These are linear regressions that we're showing here, and it clearly demonstrates that as you get to a higher utilization, you get to a lower cost per ticket. No surprise there. Now what we want to do is share some benchmarking data with you. In the left-hand column, you see the functional area. We've got service desk, contact center, and desktop support. Then we've got various cost metrics, cost per agent-assisted contact for a service desk, cost per voice minute. And then for contact center, cost per agent-assisted contact, cost per voice minute. And then in desktop support, cost per incident and cost per service request. And what we're showing for this is 2019 data. We're showing statistics in North America for the average, the minimum, and the maximum. So your average cost for an agent-assisted contact at a service desk is about $21, but it ranges from about $3.77 to $57, huge range, driven largely by differences in handle time. For contact centers, typical inbound customer service contact center, the average is $7.84 a contact, but it ranges from $2.55 to $20.91. And if we look at incidents in a desktop support environment, the average is around $64, but it ranges from just around $20 to about $213. If we look at service requests, which tend to take longer to resolve, we got about $160 on average, but it ranges from $38 to $957. Now, I mentioned earlier that your cost per ticket or cost per unit is going to depend a lot on your handle time. And so I'm showing some quartile data on this chart here, and then we're going to get to some Q&A for the service desk. If you're a top quartile service desk, your cost per minute of handle time is going to be under $1.08 or at or under $1.08. If you're in the second quartile, it's from $1.08 to $1.59. Third quartile is $1.59 to $2.10. And if you're high cost, fourth quartile, you're going to be above $2.10 cost per minute of handle time. That's for a chat or a voice contact or an email or a web handle ticket, cost per minute of handle time. Now, below that, what we're showing is contact centers. The best performers on the left, the worst performers are over on the right. For a typical inbound customer service contact center in North America, you will be top quartile if your cost per minute of handle time is under 85 cents. You'll be in the second quartile if you're between 85 cents and $1.12. You'll be in the third quartile if you're between $1.12 and $1.70. And finally, you'll be in the fourth quartile if you're above $1.70, meaning high cost if you're above $1.70. So we've done a real quick run through on the metrics that matter for service desk, desktop support, and contact centers with a focus on cost metrics and unitized cost metrics, and specifically cost per minute of handle time. In a moment, I'm going to get to some questions, but before I do so, I just want to point out that we've got our webcast scheduled for the next 6 months. I want to encourage you to sign up for these because they are always free, and over the next 6 months, we're going to continue our series on the metrics that matter. Next month, we're going to be talking about productivity metrics, and we're going to be talking about service level metrics and so on. So I would encourage you to go to our website and sign up for those. If you're interested, you can download today's presentation. Just click the button that says Attachments. You can request a free consultation with MetricNet by clicking the Vote button. And once again, we'd ask you to rate our webcast and leave any feedback that you'd like to when you exit the webcast today. Keep in mind that we'll be at Support World Live in April. That's going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm sorry, it's going to be, yes, it is in Las Vegas. We'll be at the Service Desk Institute Conference in March. That's in Birmingham, England. And then I'll be speaking as well at the SIF Conference in London in May. If you're at any of those conferences, please introduce yourself. Let me know that you follow MetricNet's webcast. At this time, I'm going to open up the Q&A dialog box and answer the questions that you may have typed in. And if you do have questions that you've not yet typed in, please do so now. So let's take a look at the questions we've got. Okay. First question, what is the typical ROI for a service desk? Well, it may surprise you to know that most service desks have an ROI above 100%. However, the ROI of a service desk can range from negative 1,000% to positive 10,000%. We've seen huge returns on investment when we measure the ROI of a service desk. Same thing with desktop support, same thing with contact centers. The primary drivers of ROI in a service desk are shift left, channel mix, and return productivity to end users. It can be measured. Most service desks do have an ROI in excess of 100%, which means that they are creating value in excess of their annual operating budget. But most service desks also don't measure it. We do that as part of every benchmark that we conduct for service desks and desktop support organizations worldwide. Next question, how do you know if management has cut costs too much? Well, when your service levels start to suffer, when your customer satisfaction is not where it needs to be, when you're in, say, the bottom quartile on cost, but your performance is also in the bottom quartile, when your customer satisfaction, your first contact resolution rate are also in the bottom quartile, chances are you've cut costs too much. Next question, how do I know if my service desk costs are too high or too low? Well, go back a couple of charts and look at the quartile on the cost per minute of handle time for the service desk. On those particular charts, you'll see that if you're above about $1.59, which is the median here for a service desk, you're probably too high cost. And if you're below $1.59, you're below the median. If you're below $1.08, you're actually low cost. So by looking at those quartile charts on page 22, you can answer the question of whether or not your costs are too high or too low. Next question is, how does the cost per ticket factor into the calculation of ROI? Well, it's the denominator of the ROI calculation. So the return is the combination of the economic value of shift left, channel mix, and return productivity to end users. That all goes in the numerator. And the denominator is going to be your annual operating expense. So your cost per ticket multiplied by your ticket volume is going to be your annual operating expense. So it's the denominator of the ROI calculation. Next question, do the cost metrics differ by channel? The metrics, keep in mind a metric is something like first contact resolution rate, customer satisfaction. The metrics don't differ by channel, but the values may differ by channel. So your cost per ticket in the voice channel is going to be more expensive than cost per ticket in a chat or an email channel, for example. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which I won't get into. But the metrics themselves don't differ by channel. The values tend to differ a little bit by channel. And one of the things you're after when you have a multi-channel or an omni-channel environment is that you want to get your metrics, you want to be performing well in all of your channels, not just in the voice channel or not just in the chat channel or not just in the email or web submit or self-service channel. Next question, I believe my service desk is a combination of level 1 and level 2, and where are the standards for correctly categorizing our desk and also ensuring that you're benchmarking against the correct cost per transaction data? My executives believe us to be a level 1 service desk, therefore cost per transaction seems to be out of bounds. Yeah, what you're talking about is a hybrid service desk. If you're both doing remote support and on-site support, that would be what we call a hybrid service desk, where your agents are doing both remote troubleshooting as well as on-site troubleshooting, device side or person side. We would really have to know more about your environment and the density of the environment. Density meaning how compact all your personnel are and whether or not you're working in a high-rise building or a campus location or spread out over a much larger location like a military installation, because your travel time per ticket is going to have a significant impact on your overall cost per ticket, and your mix of level 1, that is remote support, and on-site support is going to make a big difference on your cost. So this is something you probably want to follow up on in an email or a call to MetricNet, because without knowing the mix of level 1 and level 2 work and without knowing your travel time per ticket, it's hard to say what those benchmarks should be. But if we do have some basic information about your environment, we can probably give you some guidance on what your cost per ticket should be. That was the last of the questions. I realize we covered a lot of ground very, very quickly, but I want to encourage you to download the attachments as well as today's presentation. Thank you for attending our webcast today. It's the first webcast of 2020, first webcast of a new decade, and it was a real honor and pleasure to present metrics that matter with a focus on cost. This concludes our webcast. Thank you very much.